We acknowledge that we were founded on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Attawandaronk, the Mississauga and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and now live on land that is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We have many representatives working across this land now known as Ontario, and we acknowledge that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory. We are grateful to be able to work and live on this land, and thankful to the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial, and who continue to contribute to the strength of Ontario and to all communities across the province. To continue to center reconciliation, we encourage our team, partners, students, and teachers to take time to learn about the lands they are currently on. Visit native-land.ca for more information.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first day of Ontario Agriculture Week. So my name is Madison, and I'm the events coordinator at Eggscape, and we are very excited to begin this awesome week with a tour of a crabapple farm called Appleflats, which is located between Kitchener and Stratford. So if you're watching from that area, feel free to come in the chat and say hi. I'm very interested to see how they use these type of apples to make products and how they grow. So for anyone that's watching right now, please feel free to send any questions that you have into the chat so that our farmer can answer them. And I did ask you a question before, and I asked you, what's your favorite way to eat apples? And I had some responses, so I just wanted to share them, and then I'm going to introduce our farmer. So we had cut apples. A couple people said this, cut up and fresh, sliced up, and apple pie is yummy too. I completely agree. We had some people saying with peanut butter, caramel, and my personal favorite with cinnamon. And then we have apple juice, apple cake, and pie for their kindy class. Amazing. Thank you so much for responding. And now I'm going to introduce our farmer. Well,
hello, everyone.
Hi, Glenn. How are you?
I am excellent.
Good. Awesome. So to everyone watching, this is Glenn Smith. He is the owner of Appleflats, and he is going to introduce himself and begin our tour.
Yeah, so my name is Glenn. I'm one of the only commercial crabapple orchards in the world. We're just outside, excuse me, of Waterloo and Stratford. So you might be wondering, well, what's the difference between a crabapple and an apple? And the answer is crabapples are very, very small. They actually look like cherries rather than apples. They used to grow wild here in Canada, but over the last 100 years or so, most of them have disappeared. So we run what's called an experimental orchard, where we actually focus on commercializing new varieties of apples. So that means, how do we get apples to your grocery store? That's what we're trying to figure out. So we're working with these tiny little cherry-sized apples to try and get them to the grocery store near you. So this tree right behind me is actually where we started. This is our original heritage tree. Every other tree on our property is actually coming from this tree. So when we go to create apples that end up at your grocery store, you actually have to make sure that they're all the same. Because if you think about the apples when you walk down the aisle, they all look exactly the same like for each variety, right? All the Honeycrisps look the same. All the green Granny Smiths are green. They all have to be the same. So this big tree here in the middle, that's actually where all of our apples originally come from. So you might be wondering, well, how does one tree produce all the apples? It's actually not one tree. What you do, I'm going to zoom in real tight here to this branch, is you actually cut a little tiny piece of the branch off, just like this. And then you actually put it on a root for the tree. And instead, that's what will turn it into a whole new tree on its own. And that's a process called grafting. I'm going to flip the camera around here. And I'll actually show you exactly what I'm talking about, if I can. Maybe not. Okay, we're going to try it this way then. So all of these trees that are here on the property, they are all grown from just little tiny pieces of that original tree that I was talking about. And that is how we end up getting lots and lots and lots of apples from just one little tiny tree. So on our property here, we have more than 2,500 trees. And in order for us to get apples into grocery stores near you guys, we'll probably need to have about 10,000 trees in order just to have enough apples for everybody to eat. And so we are probably going to focus on growing for another 3 or 4 years. And then hopefully you guys will be able to see crab apples popping up in stores near where you are. And you'll know, hey, I know that guy. That's actually exactly where we came from. Why are crab apples so small? The answer to why crab apples are so small, they are just made that way. There's no real reason or rhyme to it. That is just kind of how they were created. They are one of the oldest varieties of apple in the entire world. And so that the thought process is that over time, apples have actually gotten bigger. And so ours being very small is one of the oldest possible ones you can find. Now I'm going to walk over to this other section here and show you some really cool things that we do to know what crab apples are used for. Ooh, awesome question. So crab apples are used for a variety of things right now, but our products, or what we're using our crab apples for, is for a crab apple jelly, a spicy crab apple jelly, and then a brand new craft soda. So we make a soda pop, kind of like Sprite, out of our crab apples. And then behind me here, you can see these big lines or rows of crab apples. And we're actually the only ones in the world that have planted crab apples like this. One of the things that has happened in the last 15 years is humans have discovered, instead of planting crab apples with 2 types of roots, which is what you'll learn about in school, one is called a nutrient root. And those are the ones that you see when a tree tips over, where they've all little tiny fine roots. They suck up all the water. They suck up all the nutrients to make the tree healthy and strong. The taproot is this great big root that goes right down into the ground, and it just holds the tree in place so it doesn't blow away. And some really smart scientists in the early 2000s, they discovered that you actually can grow trees on almost like grapevines, and so it has no taproot. And so you'll see, if we look at this tree here, he has to have a little stake, and that's actually to make sure that he doesn't just fall over, because all the trees are very weak. But doing this means that the crabapple trees grow much faster than they normally would. So if we had to plant trees like normal, like that one I showed you first up at the driveway, those trees have to be almost as old as you guys in order to start planting, or in order to start giving us fruit. But these ones here on all the pillars and posts, they only have to be 3 years old before they start giving us fruit. So for people like me, we really want lots of fruit fast because it's expensive. And so we're almost all of Ontario is now starting to grow its fruit just like this. So in order for us to do this and get apples to your grocery store, we have to make sure that other other orchard growers can grow trees exactly like this one. So we are the only ones in the world to have an orchard like this. How long does it take a crabapple to grow and be ripe enough to eat? So crabapples are grown, like the tree itself, it will typically take about 7 to 9 years to grow and produce enough fruit to kind of be worth picking. Every single year, though, the apples are the flowers, and then they turn into apples over the course of a season. So the tree itself stays the same, and then we get new apples every single year. How long does it take to ripen? Our apples are very early, so you guys actually could eat them when you're still on summer vacation, which is very unusual. Most apples you would be picking right now. In fact, some of you maybe have gone apple picking with your parents. Ours are actually picked in the middle of August. So we're long harvested from this orchard. And that's actually one of the reasons why we think that this apple might be good for other orchards, because it's extending when they can work by giving them apples to pick earlier than they normally would. And I'm going to show you guys one more thing, and you're going to have to use your imaginations for this because it doesn't exist yet. So, as you can see, all the orchard trellis behind me, and then the next step. So if I look behind me here, you can actually see that there's two different colors of grass. All of that lighter grass is actually going to become another section of orchard in just a few years. And that's because this first orchard over on this side has grown so well that we're going to be able to install another one. And that's going to help get all of those apples to grocery stores near you guys. How the apples are picked. That is actually really weird. So because our apples are the size of a cherry, you can't pick them by hand. It's too slow, and then everyone would be sad. So we actually pick our apples like olives. So we have little shakers. We attach them to the tree. We shake the different branches of the tree and drop the fruit onto tarps. From that point, we actually roll the tarps up, and then we run them through a sorting machine. And the reason we do that is when you shake the tree, you get all the stuff that you don't want, like leaves and sticks and gross bugs and stuff. And you don't want that to go into your jam. So we have this, we've invented it, but it's a little sorting machine, and it cleans all the apples for you so they're nice and clean like they would be going to a grocery store. And then that's actually how we harvest all of them. And then after that, we have them in great big bins, and we take them off to go wherever they need to go. So whether they go to your grocery store as apples, whether we squeeze them and get all the juice out, they all go in those bins. That's as far as we go. After that, everyone else does things like that.
Sorry, Glenn. I just think you might be covering the speaker with your hand. It just got a little muffly during that question, but it's been sounding until then.
Is that better?
Yep, that's great.
Maybe better? Okay. So here, this is actually one of our sorting machines. So I'll do my best to zoom in here. So this is actually Brussels from your toothbrush. They're exactly the same. But this one, the black one, is actually a little bit more coarse. And the reason that we do that is when we pour apples in this side, the lighter bristles push the apples over to the other side, and then this coarse one does all the work and strips all the leaves and dirt and gunk and stuff that we don't want right out from the apple, and then it just spits out all the fresh clean apples at this end. So we have somebody who stands here and pours the apples in. It runs through this system here and then spits them out into a nice fresh clean apple bin, ready for everybody to eat. And our apples are very, very sour, so you don't pull apples very often. Sorry, that was a question and I just missed it. How many apples can grow on one tree? Ooh, that's a really good question. A lot. We actually don't measure by individual apples itself because our apples are so small. We want as many as we can. So we actually try and get the weight of apples. So how much do all those apples weigh? An average tree will produce about 350 to 400 pounds of apples. So if you think about each of our tiny apples weighing maybe a 16th of a pound, it means that we would translate that to maybe 2,000 or 3,000 apples for every single tree. So a lot of apples. These trees are very good at producing apples. Are crab apples the same as other apples? They're similar. It would kind of be like cousins. So they're very close, but they're not exactly the same. They've got a little bit different of a flavor, and their size is very different. So it would kind of be like cousins to apples. That is a better way of describing it. So they're a little different. You guys have good questions. Do crab apples go bad? How long does it take? Yes, they do go bad. If you leave them on the tree, it takes about a month for them to go bad. So by the time you guys go back to school, crab apples won't be good anymore. Now, if you pick them off the tree, they'll go bad in maybe 5 or 6 days. So you have maybe a week in order to before they actually go bad. And the last one is if you squeeze all the juice out of it, like we do for most of ours, you end up having them go bad in just 24 hours. You only have 1 day to get them frozen. And other than that, it's going to go bad and it's going to taste like vinegar, which is not good anymore. We would like to know if we can see some apples to see the size. Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think I have any on the trees. Let me see if I can find something that would be about the right size of a crabapple. We've picked all of these ones here, so we'll see what we can find. Let me see what we've got. I probably should have brought a regular apple just to show you how much different they are, but I didn't think of that. So you're going to have to bear with me. So a crabapple would probably be about the size of one of these rocks. Okay. Probably one of these big ones, maybe. So they're not tiny, but you'd be able to fit maybe 10 or 15 of them in your hand if you held it out pretty simply. They are pretty small. How did you decide to begin a crabapple farm? So the really fast answer to that is we actually didn't decide to do it. We had one tree that was planted accidentally on our property. And then when I was in university, we realized that the trees were disappearing. And we thought, okay, well, maybe we could do something about that. And so we started planting crab apples. And then we realized we needed to do something with the crab apples. So we started making a crabapple juice and a crabapple jelly. And it just kind of went from there. And now we have more than 2,500 because every time we sell some more jelly, we needed to plant more crab apples. And then we had more crab apples. So we had to sell some more jelly. And it just kind of grew from there. The answer to the question, how do trees grow apples? That's actually really interesting and surprisingly simple. So when you see a tree full of flowers in April or May or June, all of those flowers will actually turn into apples. So the tree is opening up a flower so that it can come and get pollinated by honeybees or wasps or hummingbirds or some other animal turn this into an apple. And so the tree will then, all the different flowers that have been pollinated, apples, say about right now, where you have your full size apple, and it all stemmed just from a flower back in May, and some very hardworking bees. What color are our flowers? So our flowers for these are brilliant white. They're about as white as a piece of paper. That's pretty abnormal. Most trees have pink or red or yellow flowers. So the fact that ours are very white is pretty weird. In May, you guys are welcome to come for tours if any of you are close. In May, behind me, this whole orchard just looks like entire pieces of paper just stuck. You can't even see through the actual orchard. There are so many flowers. So that's probably the coolest time to come for a tour. but because you guys are still in school, nobody ever remembers to come. And so we don't actually get busy for tours until the end of June or July. And by that point, there's no more flowers and just teeny tiny apples about the size of a marble. You guys have absolutely fantastic questions. Is there anything else I can answer for you? How does the shaking machine work? Imagine, I'm trying to think if I could actually show you the machine itself, but not quickly. So it fits. Imagine if you had a hammer. We actually have basically the hammer with a battery attached, so we don't have to do the shaking. And then what comes out of the top of a hammer is a hook. It's a little piece of metal, and then on the end is a little rubber guard to protect. So when you shake it against the tree or vibrate it against the tree, it doesn't damage the tree. And then all you do is you pull the trigger just like a gun, and it will actually vibrate the tree, and all the apples will drop off of that branch onto the tarp. So all we're doing is just looping it onto a branch about the size of maybe an inch or two, and then you just shake it and vibrate it, and all of the apples will drop. So the machine is really just one hammer with a hook and then a little trigger to pull to make it actually shake. Wants to know if bugs like eating your crab apples and how you avoid it happening. They do. They do like eating our crab apples. They like it a lot. One of the things that is interesting about our orchard is we actually don't do what most orchards do, which is use pesticides or herbicides to actually stop those bugs from eating our apples. The reason being is my parents actually live here, and so do my brother, and it would make them very sick if we put pesticides or herbicides on this orchard. And since I like them, we have decided to not do that. So what we do instead, I'll actually see if I can show you this. I'll have to get closer. So my brother, who does this with me, he actually spends almost all of his time figuring out what animals eat the bugs. And then he actually does, let me see, he does this. He builds little birdhouses for them. You can probably see them all the way down the row there. We build more than 50 birdhouses on the property to actually eat all the bugs and protect our crab apples. Also, deer really like our apples, but we are okay with them being here. So we actually collect all of our used apples, and then we go and put them in a different field about 1 kilometer away so that the deer can still eat all of the leftover apples, because we like those guys. We don't want them to get hurt. So we put those farther away so that the deer can eat all the apples that they want, but they don't eat our actual trees. So the answer to that question is we have a lot of birds here, and we do our best to try and manage an entire ecosystem here on the orchard, which is also a little abnormal. Most apples don't take that much time to do that. There was a question here, but I did miss it, so you can ask that again. What happens when it snows? Nothing happens when it snows. From about late October all the way until maybe May, there is nothing here. It is not very exciting. The trees just lose their leaves just like they normally do. And we actually don't do any agriculture at that point in time. That is the point where we go and sell our crabapple jelly. So we go to farmers markets, we go to grocery stores, and that's where we spend most of our time when we're not growing apples. So about 6 months of the year, we're here on the orchard actually turning it into stuff, growing the trees, making sure the trees are healthy, and picking our apples. And then the other 6 months of the year, we actually go to shows and farmers markets and grocery stores and have them buy our apples. So when it snows, we go to work on the road. And when there's no snow, we're at work here in the orchard. It's a pretty seasonal thing to do, is working in the orchard. What do crab apples taste or smell like? This is actually going to be some homework for you guys, because next time you're in the grocery store, ask your mom or dad to buy a green Granny Smith apple. And that is pretty close to what a crab apple will taste and smell like. The reason is that those Granny Smiths are actually about 50% are crab apple. we are one of the two parents for that type of apple that was pioneered at the University of Michigan. And so if you want to know what a crabapple or taste or smell like and you can't figure out where we are or you're not close to us, that's totally fine. If you go to a grocery store, ask for a green Granny Smith apple, and that's pretty much exactly what ours tastes like, just super small. Why are they called crab apples? I actually don't know. That's a very good question, and I don't have any answer to that. I've never had anyone be able to explain it, so I have no idea. I don't know why. Excuse me. I don't know why they're called crab apples as opposed to flurf and floffs. I have no idea. It just seems to be a commonly accepted vernacular. And there are crabapple trees all over the world. They are becoming less and less of, like, some varieties are taking over and other varieties are disappearing. But if you go to China, there are lots of crabapple trees. If you go to Russia, there are crabapple trees. If you go to Poland, there are crabapple trees. Even if you go to northern France, there are crabapple trees. So they really are just everywhere. It just depends what type of variety they are. Hold on just a second. There we go. So that is a really good question. I don't know why they're called crab apples, but everyone in the world has just decided that's what these things are. How do you winterize your tree? Ooh, very good question. We actually don't do anything to winterize the tree right now, but that's actually because we haven't managed to build them yet. What we should have, and I'm going to jump back to our orchard on this side here. So in the orchard here with the trellis behind me, so we actually should have windmills that are installed there. And unfortunately, we don't have them yet. So I don't know if we'll be able to build them this year. It's taken us more than 2 years in order to actually do that. So we'll see if we can get the windmills up this year. But the windmills will actually protect your tree from getting frost because it will move the air. So when things get cold and things freeze, if you move air past it, it stops it from freezing, and that's how you would normally winterize trees. But unfortunately, I don't have any windmills to do that yet. We're still too new as an orchard. How long does it take to get to the store from the farm? Not very long. When we juice our apples, so we squeeze them and get our juice out, we would then make jelly probably within about a week. And then from that point, we would actually have that delivered to a store within just a few days. So the whole thing start to finish, for the first time, like going from, part one to finished product, is probably less than 2 weeks. And then if you want to go, we do that again consistently at a different point in time through the year. So we're orchard all the way to grocery store. That usually takes about a week. And this, by the way, is what our craft. So there we go. Our craft soda looks like these days. So we've moved away from doing a juice, and instead we found it to be a lot more fun to have like a low sugar option to a can of Sprite. All right, there any more questions? How do you get a job like yours? Is there any specific school program? There isn't any specific school programs. There are some programs that will deal with agriculture. So there's a number of courses that you could take, like horticulture in high school, and there's a number of programs that help you get jobs in agriculture in university. There are really no programs designed to work on an experimental orchard like ours. That being said, there is a huge amount of energy and effort and a lot of people that want to do experimental orcharding. So the answer is you actually just need to start when you want. you'll learn as you go, and there's really no pressure, even if it doesn't work, because no one is necessarily expecting you to do so. So even if you find like you want to do pears instead of apples, you can just start harvesting pears from your backyard or maybe from a neighbor's property, and you can turn those into some pear jam or pear juice. And from that's really how you can get started. Uh, at least in order to deal with our type of growing, it's very, very easy. And so I really hope that you guys get to experience that at some point. We do hire people through the summer to actually help us with this. So maybe in a couple of years, we'll be able to hire some of you guys, and that you can actually come out to the orchard and help us make sure that it stays looking nice and turn stuff into really cool crabapple products.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Glenn. That was amazing. We had a ton of questions from everyone, which was awesome, and you answered them so well. We really appreciate being able to go behind the scenes to learn more about agriculture in Ontario for this week. Is there any last words that you'd like to say to the people that are still watching?
The biggest thing I would say is agriculture is a lot more fun, a lot more exciting, and uses a lot more technology than I think most people ever would really think. Often we think of farmers as like riding on a tractor or looking at corn, and the answer to that is like we do those things, but inventing the machines that are required to ride on those tractors or work on that corn is really cool. So if you like computer programming, there is programming jobs in agriculture. If you like harvesting or working outdoors, you can do that with agriculture. If you want every day to be a little bit different, you can also do that in agriculture. Most people think of it as kind of being like only one thing. And the answer is there's pretty much anything that you like. You can find a way of doing it in agriculture if this is where you want to work when you're a little bigger.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone watching. Have a great rest of your Ontario Agriculture Week. And we hope you join us for the virtual events coming up every day at 10 a.m. So there'll be a link in the chat. Bye, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye.